The winter of 1884 came early to the Montana Territory. Snow drifted across the valley like pale smoke, gathering against the dark line of pines where a small cabin was slowly taking shape. The woman working there, Clara Bennett, widow, 30 years old and 7 months with child, was building the walls one log at a time. Each beam she lifted was a battle against the cold and against memory. Her husband, Samuel, had died the previous spring when a wagon wheel broke on the Snake River Trail. She had buried him herself beneath a cottonwood, then taken the last of their savings and bought this patch of land. 20 acres of stubborn hope. Now she built alone. The wind carried the scent of pine sap and distant snow. Her breath fogged the air as she hammered, her body already slow with pregnancy. Still she worked. No one else would do it for her. From the tree line, a watcher stood. A man of the Apache nation, tall, wrapped in a weathered blanket the color of smoke. His name was Taza. He had watched her for days, keeping distance, never speaking. Some said these lands still held ghosts of old wars. Others said the Apache had moved on. But this one had not. He saw the woman's stubborn rhythm, her exhaustion, the way her hand sometimes went to her belly. She worked until the hammer slipped from her numb fingers, then simply leaned against the half-built wall and closed her eyes. The watcher turned away, but he did not go far. The next morning she woke to find a pile of cut firewood stacked neatly by her door. No footprints in the snow, no sound in the woods, only the quiet evidence that someone had been there. For 3 days it continued. Tracks she never saw, work done while she slept. The path to the creek cleared, a beam lifted, the fire fed. She did not ask who. Maybe the wind had turned kind for once. But one evening, as she bent to gather kindling, a voice came from the edge of the clearing. Low, calm, shaped by both silence and storms. "You should rest," it said. She turned sharply. He stood there, half shadow, half man. Clara felt her heart quicken, but she said only, "I have no one else to build it." He nodded once. Then, "I will help." That was all. No questions, no introduction. By dusk they worked side by side, lifting logs and fitting them into place. He moved with quiet skill, never looking directly at her. She did not ask his story. She could feel it was written in scars and in solitude. Together, they slid the final roof beam into place. If you're enjoying this story, the frozen land, the quiet courage, the spark of 2 lost souls finding warmth, it would mean the world to us if you'd support our work. Subscribe, leave a comment, and tell us what you think, so we can keep bringing you more tales of the untamed West. That night, when the sky split open with stars, she lit a lamp inside the cabin for the first time. The flame flickered over bare logs and shadows that looked almost like safety. Outside, she could hear him moving beyond the fence, the sound of a horse shifting its weight. When she finally lay down, she realized she was no longer afraid of the dark. Winter deepened. Snow came heavy and stayed, draping the valley in white silence. Clara's world shrank to the glow of the hearth and the rhythm of her breathing. Taza came often but never stayed long. He would leave food, repair a hinge, chop wood, and disappear before she could thank him. Once, she saw him watching her from the ridge, still as a carved figure against the snow. He was both guardian and ghost. By February the storms grew fierce. The roof groaned under the weight, and the cabin trembled with each gust. On the night the child came, the sky was black and boiling, the wind screaming like something alive. Pain took her fast, hard and merciless. She tried to reach the door, but her body betrayed her. A single cry escaped her lips before the world tilted and went white. When she woke, Taza was there. The fire burned high, and the storm howled outside. He knelt beside her, his hands steady, his voice low in a language she didn't know but somehow trusted. "I am a healer," he said quietly, meeting her eyes so she could hear him over the wind. "I know how to help you deliver. Breathe when I say. Rest when I say. We will bring your child safely." His calm became her anchor. He boiled water, laid clean cloths, and wrapped a heated stone for her back. He guided her through the waves. Press now, wait now, measuring the rhythm of her body like a man reading the river. Hours passed. The child came slow, too slow. When at last the baby slid into his hands, the world went terribly quiet. No cry, no breath, only the hiss of the fire in Clara's breaking heart. Taza moved without panic. He cleared the baby's mouth with a gentle sweep, rubbed the small back with his palm, then lifted the tiny body to his shoulder and breathed soft puffs of air across the lips, counting in his own tongue. He dipped 2 fingers in melted snow, touched them to the child's feet and chest, and beat a light rhythm with his thumb, coaxing the small heart to remember its work. For a long, fragile moment, nothing. Then a shudder, a thin gasp, a cry. Weak at first, then fierce. Clara collapsed with relief as Taza wrapped the child in his own blanket and set him against her skin. "He is here," he murmured. "He chose to stay." Exhausted, Clara drifted in and out of sleep, the fire crackling, the newborn warm and breathing against her. When she woke again, the storm had stilled. Taza sat by the hearth, feeding the flame. Snowlight poured through the window, turning his face silver. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words felt small. He nodded once, as if he already knew. In the morning he was gone. Only his blanket remained, covering her and the child like a promise. The storm left behind a silence so wide it seemed to stretch clear to heaven. Days became weeks, and Clara healed the way the land did after a hard winter, slowly, completely. She named the child Samuel, after the father who never came home. Each morning she rose to the sound of his breathing, the soft hum of survival. Taza returned quietly, as though he had never left. He gathered wood, fixed the chimney, mended what time had broken. He never intruded, never asked. Yet somehow he filled the space Samuel's death had left. They spoke little, and that silence became its own language. Sometimes in the evenings she'd see him at the fence line staring east. Once she asked, "Do you miss them?" He said only, "Every day." Then, slowly, he told her. The soldiers, the fire, the river that had taken everything he loved, a wife, 2 small children. He had buried them himself. His words were quiet but heavy as the mountains. When he finished, she said nothing, because grief was a country they both already knew. When the snow melted, he left again, promising to return after tending his herd. She watched him go, the valley echoing with absence. But when he came back, carrying herbs and the faint scent of cedar smoke, she realized the truth. He was no longer a stranger. He was the line between what she'd lost and what she might still have. That night, little Samuel fussed. Taza lifted the child, murmuring soft words in Apache, and the baby stilled. Firelight danced across their faces. A man of the red earth, a woman of pale winter, and a child who belonged to both. The world would never understand, but the world was far away. By March, the land began to breathe again. The creek ran high with thaw, and grass returned to the hills. Clara worked the yard with Samuel tied against her chest, his laughter mixing with the hum of bees. Taza often came early, mending fences or clearing the pasture. He spoke little, yet peace followed him like sunlight follows dawn. When the ranchers came, men from town with rifles and curiosity, they asked if she was safe, if the Apache was bothering her. She told them, "He's the reason I'm alive." Their faces tightened. They left uneasy. She didn't care. One morning Taza told her he would go north to visit the graves of his wife and children. He said it simply, without asking permission. She thanked him for everything, for saving her, for saving Samuel, for never asking for anything in return. He nodded once, touched his chest, and left. Spring deepened. She planted beans and corn, humming to her son. When the wind came from the hills, she thought she heard hooves, but always too far to be sure. Then, one warm afternoon, he returned. His coat was torn, his face tired, but his eyes were steady. In his hands he carried a small bundle wrapped in doeskin. Inside were 3 carved figures, a woman, a man, and a child. "They belong to my family," he said. "I made them again so I would not forget." She traced the carvings, unable to speak. From that day they worked side by side, not as savior and saved, but as 2 souls rebuilding something the world had tried to take. He taught her to plant willow to hold the creek bank, to read the sky before rain, to listen when silence had meaning. When evening came, they stood at the porch watching the sun sink behind the red cliffs. He said quietly, "We are still here." She nodded, "Yes, we are." Years later, travelers passing through the valley spoke of smoke rising from a cabin where two worlds once collided and instead found peace. They said a widow lived there once, saved by a man the world called enemy, and that together they built a home where forgiveness had a face. But Clara never thought of it as legend. To her it was simpler, a roof that held, a child who thrived, and a man who chose love over vengeance. When dusk fell, she would step outside and watch Taza play with Samuel near the corral, their laughter drifting over the grass. Then she'd whisper to the wind, "Thank you for sending him." And somewhere beyond the hills, the land seemed to breathe in answer. If this story of Clara, Taza, and little Samuel touched your heart, if you believe that love and forgiveness can grow even from the hardest winters, please subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. Tell us what you think and rate this story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your voice helps keep these legends alive, one story at a time.